Hey guys, and welcome to another Star Wars Destiny video. I'm coming here today with a deck tech / worlds recap video on Chopper Engineers. Now, there are a couple reasons why it's taken me so long to get to this, one of them being just plain old post-worlds fatigue. And then I kind of justified a couple things just by saying that, if I only go 5-3 at Worlds, I don't want to distract away from all the other good accomplishments. Obviously, Andrew winning was crazy, but there's lots of other deck lists being posted from Worlds, all that jazz going on, and my old 5-3 shouldn't distract from those. But in any case, I figured it's about time I did something to talk about this deck, so I decided to make a video and just kind of talk about the list. So first off, it's two Rebel Engineers together with the good old Chopper. And you'll see that you can look at the top 4 cards and reveal a mod. Notice that it doesn't say vehicle mod, it just says mod. And you get an armored reinforcement with that extra 3 left over, which means that you can actually grab both vehicle mods and you can grab Chopper mods. Now this is important because Chopper here has an insane ability, as we all know, the ability to play a mod from your hand or discard pile, decreasing its cost by 1. But there are only really 2 good mods. You can make an argument that Rocket Booster is okay and worth playing with Chopper, but it's not really great. Whereas Grappling Arm with the 1 and the +2 and the Focus, and even the Disrupt, is kind of insane at 1 cost. It's the standard DH-17. Back when we had that, everybody ran it. If this wasn't Modified Droid, every melee deck would run this. And then you look at Salvage Arm. Obviously, this card is busted when you keep in mind how good it is with resources and disrupt and discard. So basically, because you have 2 Rebel Engineers, you can afford to run only the 4 Chopper mods, and you can basically guarantee that you'll get 1 round 1. The odds of missing is something like, I think, it's like 96% that you hit. And that's not even accounting for Mulligan, because you're seeing 13 cards and you're looking for 1. It's pretty crazy. There are basically no games at Worlds where I didn't start with a Chopper mod. You could play 96 games and you get the point. In any case, that adds to the consistency of the deck. And one of the things about the deck is just raw value math is actually pretty good. So if you look at it, you have 4 dice. So that's like 4 effective dice. You have a card draw from Rebel Engineer, a card draw from Rebel Engineer, a pseudo card draw from Chopper, because you can discard to reroll with the mod and then pull it back. So that's an extra card. And you have the extra resource from Chopper. So just the base math of it is plus 3 cards, 4 dice, and a resource. So you're looking at something like 8 value there in effective dice. Obviously, cards can... Arguing that a card is the same as a die... you could argue that it's worth less value. So maybe you say that's like 7.5 effective value or something like that. But even with that being the case, you also have Armored Reinforcement, which is an extra card again and an extra resource. So that's 2 more value on round 1. So round 1, you're looking at like 10 effective value. And just basically a boatload of cards. And that's one thing that I really enjoyed about this deck, is that especially into Probe, if you're scared of that, or just into random discard, you can have rounds where you've activated your Engineers to start and you're looking at a 7-card hand, most of which are upgrades that can't be controlled. Now, the Rebel Engineers do miss once or twice throughout the game. It's just going to happen. But it's not too big of a concern, really. Yeah, so that's just kind of like the base math of the deck. I'm going to go ahead and start talking a little bit about the evolution of the deck. So to begin with, I was running a lot of cheap vehicles. I was running stuff like good old Crate Speeder and Black 1, BB-8, and I was running like Bones and Reassemble, and you could do things like reassemble with BB-8, then attach it to Black 1 to ready it. You could do lots of nasty stuff there, but basically what I found is that the yellow villain matchup was too hard, especially into any yellow villains that drew extra cards. And the way I went about solving that is by using the Shadowcaster, because this good old 6 side here is amazing. Because basically, if you can get to the point where you're within 6 damage of killing a yellow, or you have a reset available, and you can hit the yellow twice, you can basically pull and kill the yellow in one round, guaranteeing that they can't then desperate it the next round. So basically, as long as you can guarantee that the round that you pull it, your Shadowcaster doesn't get blown up, you're not going to get desperate measured. And Shadowcaster is just kind of nuts, especially with 2 engineers. So basically, the deck went from playing a bunch of cheap and trying to win that way, and doing some crazy round 1 damage shenanigans with like a chopper with 2 chopper mods and like a crate speeder or like a black 1 BB-8, to basically being a combo deck that tries to get caster out, and if it gets caster out, it kind of wins. So as far as control goes, I'll just get this out of the way because it's kind of boring. We have automated defense because it's consistent, easy pickings because obviously you can have that massive upside of hitting the 2 yellow dice. It's a little bit sad that it's spot yellow because chopper is always the first target. We have electromagnetic pulse. It shouldn't really be that hard to understand why. The meta is full of droids, and most of the villain yellow decks even have droids because you're looking at like Afra and Forlom. Into the Garbage Chute is great late game. You do lose the Engineer's card draw, which is annoying, but late game it doesn't really matter. Getting 2 dice removal just to keep you alive so that you don't die, and then giving your Shadowcaster time to get out there and win. Motivate is amazing. So you have to have 2 Reddit characters, and it can only be used on character dice, but being able to hit any side is legit, especially when combined with Salvage Arms, because you can hit your opponent for a lot of what they weren't expecting. And it's also basically logistics. Motivate's a great utility slot. I'll come back to that. No answer, I'll come back to that. Outgun, crazy late game if you have mods. It's going to allow you to basically remove any dice that you want and any number of dice that you want, which is really powerful. Obviously not very resource efficient, but it's extremely card efficient. And we have scruffy looking Nerve Herder, and I'll come back to that. Over on the mod sides, we have triple laser turret, targeting astromechs, salvage arms, riot shield. Well, that's another defensive card. Great with chopper because you get it for free. You can overwrite one of his mods. R2 astromech and then grappling arm. So obviously for the caster, we have R2s, targeting, and triple lasers combined with BB-8s. BB-8s are great because what you can do on the round you play them is that you hard cast them, you roll them out, and you kind of try to reroll for that resource, or the +1 resource, and then take a money from them. But if you get a focus, sometimes you'll use the focus instead and just go right ahead with like damage or whatever you may need. And then when you pull the caster, you attach BB-8, and you get 2 dice value out of him, which is insane for 1. His dice are great at 1, so you're looking at 1 for 2 focus, or 1 for like a resource and a focus. And especially, I mean, you'll notice I'm running targeting astromechs, especially because you're relying so heavily on resolving the 6 side on the Shadowcaster. The focus is really important. If you're not resolving the 6 on Shadowcaster, you're losing because you have to kill the villain yellow. If you don't kill the villain yellow the round you pull, you either have to get extremely lucky and your opponent doesn't draw desperate, or you're going to lose. So into most of the meta, if you're looking at droids, especially like Han droids, or even AR Satine, they're relatively easy matchups because once you get the caster down, the caster is just more broken than anything they can do. Into chopper droids, it's a little bit more nuanced because they can really control you. My round 2 matchup was into Andrew, and he demolished me, but it's still like a super swingy matchup. If I get my caster down, all of a sudden it's a free win because 16 droids is kind of insane. If you don't get caster down into chopper early enough, you can definitely lose. But then when you talk about the villain yellow matchups, Raylo is kind of a walk in the park. They can't deal with Shadowcaster hitting them for 12 round 2. And then your control is pretty decent into them. Once you've killed 1, an outgun round is basically going to time walk them. You will lose chopper round 1 in 99% of games into Raylo, but it just doesn't matter. The biggest concern is if you just roll bad and don't get enough resources into Raylo, but Raylo is considered basically a free win with the deck. Shouldn't be surprising with fat vehicles. Everybody pretty much knows that. Palp, red Palp, easy. Yellow Palp, hard, extremely hard. Yellow Palp is your hardest matchup. Shouldn't be a surprise. But one of the surprising things, and this is where I'll get to talking about this now, is that I actually felt like it was favored into villain yellow towards the end, into everything except for maybe Afra. But Forlom and Java just became like a walk in the park. It was just so easy to win. Because basically what the deck is trying to do is it's trying to gate crap ton of resources around 1 into villain yellow, and then go into round 2 with like 7, 8, 9 resources. um, and you're going to try to hit your opponent's hand to guarantee they don't have Desperate. And then once they don't have Desperate, you pull the caster and you kill their yellow. And at this point in the game, you've probably lost like your chopper, maybe you have half damage to engineer, and you've killed their villain yellow, but you have like a TLT, R2 Astromech, Tardian Astromech caster on the board, and that is crazy. So basically at that point you've kind of free won because you just spend all of your you just control their dice. They're out with like garbage chutes and good old outgun. It's worth noting that automated defense can spot your R2 Astromech, and it can spot your targeting Astromech, and it can spot your BB-8. So you go from there to basically, as long as they don't kill you, the Shadowcaster will outrace them. And they can't remove the Shadowcaster die unless you like miss damage and they have 2 control cards. And even then you just reset with the R2 Astromech. So Caster is doing anywhere from 6 to like 20 damage in each round following. So you're basically a free win if you kill their villain yellow. And it really played out that way for me. I felt like I had like a 60-70% win rate into villain yellow decks. Except for maybe Afra, who can so easily draw cards. Like a probe is pretty rough. And you might be asking, like, how do you make sure you keep them off of that Scruffy in round 2? Off of the Desperate round 2. Well, you have Scruffy looking Nerf Herder, and if you have this card, it's so easy. You just wait for them to use their draw effects, and then you take out their Desperate. If you don't have Scruffy, it's a little bit harder, but what you're gonna try to do is you're gonna use the good old chopper discards. Now, obviously, if your opponent has 2 direct control cards, they might be able to remove both chopper discard sides, but there will be a decent number of control cards that just can't hit that discard randomly in the middle of the turn. So you're looking at like Forsakens might not be online, and like Sinister Peace can't hit it, things like that. And most villain decks actually don't run that much direct control. Even Afra, if you don't roll the melee sides for them to use their crash landing on, the odds of them being able to remove both chopper dice is really low. And as long as you have 1 chopper die left, you can use your salvaged arm together with motivates as well to basically pump the discard side. And especially into unexpecting players, it's really easy. You're just playing out around, you're kind of dirtling because, I mean, you just activate engineer, like discard a reroll, pull out a chopper mod, you just go super slow, and then they're sitting at like, they played a support or whatever, maybe it's Forlum, maybe it's Java, they're sitting at like, 3 to 4 cards in the middle of the round, and you just like, okay, I'll focus to discard, and they look at you kind of like, oh crap, and then you just salvage arm pump it for like 3 to 4, they have no cards left, you pull your caster, and you load it up, and you kill their yellow. And just to give you guys an idea of like how effective this is, I played a lot of pods, probably like 10-ish somewhere in the 10 to 15 range in pods. And I played in a side event. It was the 40-40, but I ran this list plus the Satine. And I played in the main event, and in all of those games, I only had Desperate. I only had my vehicle blown up once, and that was in a pod. That was into Forlom, who he got the kill and drew like plus 6 cards off of the draw card bounty, and I was like, well, I guess I lose. So yeah, that was rough. But other than that, I never had my caster blown up. So you really can keep your opponent off of Shadowcaster, and that basically means that you're probably going to win. And you might ask why? Well, here's a small claim I'm going to make. The Shadowcaster is more broken than Fist. It is the most broken card in the game, providing you can get mods on it. So why do I say that? Well, the Shadowcaster has this 6 damage side. There are multiple mods that help you get to that 6. So whether or not you can resolve the 6, you can argue that like you can't guarantee the 6, but you basically can. But even then, if you just hit one of these 4 damage sides, you're doing at least Fist damage. But you might be doing twice as much direct damage as a Fist can do in a single die resolution, and you're doing it with the ability to not have that die removed. So with Fist, at least your opponent can be like, well, I guess I'll Sinister Peace, or I guess I'll Automated Defense, or sometimes they might pull out a crazy Entangle or something. But with a Shadowcaster, that's not going to happen. So it forces your opponent to have at least 2 die control, and it and you have to miss on your roll. And beyond that, beyond not being able to remove the die, you can also reset it and use it twice in a round. So while Fist's max damage that you can get out of it that's good in like after the round, even the round you played is like 9. The round after that is like 6 direct damage. Whereas the Shadowcaster's max direct damage is 12 and is much harder to interact with, and it's much easier to guarantee that direct damage side, because you have cards like Targeting Astromech and BB-8 with the 50% focus sides. Now, if you look at cost difference between them, we'll say the Shadowcaster, costs 4, and then you definitely need a triple laser turret, so that's 6, and then 7. So you're paying more for the caster, but you can keep in mind that this adds a 2-cost die, so you might want to cut out the cost from there. So it really costs 5 resources to have Shadowcaster online. You need a Targeting Astromech or a BB-8 and a Shadowcaster and an R2 Astromech. So 5 resources, it's the same cost as a Fist, and it will do twice as much damage and is harder to interact with, and can potentially do even 3 times as much damage if you have enough money to reset twice in a round. And that's not even accounting for the extra 2s or 3s that might be coming from your triple laser turret. So if you're triple laser, if you have the crazy hand where you manage to have like 4 resources, you already have the TLT down, and you're going to be able to use both R2 Astromechs, you could conceivably do, we'll just say the 2 from the TLT and the 6 from the Shadowcaster, so that's 8 each activation. You're looking at 24 damage from 1 card. It's crazy. I mean, the fact that this card alone made me able to crush the villain yellow matchups is kind of insane. I mean, yeah, people don't remember just how broken the Shadowcaster is. Now, part of what makes it not broken is that you do have to have mods, so you basically have to run an engineer, and I would argue that it's really only amazing with 2 rebel engineers, because then you can guarantee that you get the right mod setup. But yeah, that's my contention, that Shadowcaster is the most broken card in the game, basically. Obviously, it doesn't play out that way because of you have to run specific characters, and there are plenty of answers to Shadowcaster in the meta. Some of you will point out that I'm only running 1 AR target, and they'll be like, well, what about Embargo? And I'll just ask you to look at how many lists in the top whatever had Embargo. I never had an Embargo played against me all tournaments, so I basically went with a gut feeling and came off that. Oh, also, for hitting the Desperate Measures, I also ran a no answer randomly, just in case you couldn't quite get that last card out of their hand. Yeah. So that's kind of the deck. It can do crazy things. If you are able to salvage arm or resource side on Chopper round 1, you're feeling great. If you're able to get a couple salvage arms round 1, you're feeling insane. And basically, yeah, you set up the Shadowcaster, and Shadowcaster does Shadowcaster things, which is basically just kill the whole board by itself. I'm going to go ahead and start talking about Worlds then. So what happened at Worlds is basically round 1, I played against a Chopper Droids, I believe. It might have been Han, but I'm pretty sure it was Chopper. I kind of crushed that matchup. I got the caster down round 1, and it just basically solo carried for me. I think I ended the game with all of my characters live. But this is a while back, so pardon any errors I make. Round 2, I played against Andrew, which sucks because when you're playing a solitaire deck like this, the longer you play the solitaire deck, the better it is for the other player, because they get better and better at beating your solo game plan. And basically, Andrew knew that all he had to do is keep me off of resources and disrupt and remove every single resource side I ever rolled. And I didn't roll a single natural resource side in the first 2 rounds, which is just crazy unlucky. I even played a BB-8 and it never rolled resource side, so I was forced to use focuses a couple times to try to get to resources, and he would just remove them all. So he crushed me, which felt bad. Round 2, like 188 players playing that day or something. To face your teammate sucks, especially if that teammate goes on to win the whole tournament. Round 3, I played then against a Jabba, and that game was so sad because it actually went how I wanted the game to go, which is that we ended round 2 with, I had a caster down with a TLT and a Targeting Astromech and an R2 Astromech, and I had killed his Jabba, so it was safe and it was going to win me the game, but I was already dead because round 1 he played an Umbaran hover tank with a Watt power action, and that thing dealt 18 to me in 2 rounds. But not only, and you might be asking, well, that's your fault for not having control. Well, I had an EMP both rounds, which would have removed it, and both rounds he played the good old counterintelligence and put my EMP on top. so I couldn't remove it, and he just took the special 3 times, and I was kind of sad. And even then, I only had 6 damage on each of my characters, but he had a fist in his hand, and I used a chopper discard. For I think it must have been a single salvaged arm plus a chopper discard, so 50-50 to hit the fist, and I missed the fist, and he dropped the fist, and the fist killed me that round. So that was a really sad game. That can definitely happen. Like, the yellow villain matchups are scary, and anytime a deck that can drop a card that can do 2 to each of your characters and can protect it and can wad it out round 1 and can protect it with the good old counterintelligence, any deck is going to do well with that start. So I lost it and started the day 1-2, and then the next round was against an Afra, managed to win. Next round was against a Jabba, that was against Claus, and I crushed that matchup. That one went perfect. It was the same thing. Round 2, kill Jabba, but he didn't have like a crazy. I think he was dropping like ties early, but he didn't have the crazy counterintelligence start, and I was able to scruffy him round 2, and basically wrecked that game by killing his Jabba with the Shadowcaster. Next game was into a Ewok list, but it wasn't a like Plowox, it was a 5-wide Ewoks or whatever, so it had enough to blow up my caster, but I got lucky. I drew Scruffy round 1 and round 2, so I was basically able to keep him off the convergence and then kill enough Ewoks that he wasn't going to be able to kill me, and because he can't really remove Chopper, I kept damage off him because I think I had the shields early, kept him from being damaged, and he wasn't able to get like target acquired or anything down on him, so Chopper being left alive all game is going to do so much work when he's got 3 mods and can. I was basically dumping my opponent's hand most rounds is what I was trying to do, and when Ewoks can't play cards, you kind of just free win. So that was scary because of the convergence, but I drew what I needed. Moved on to the next round, and I'd clawed my way back up to 4-2 at this point. Through 4 decks in a row that could blow up my caster, and then I face a 5th deck, and it's Palp. It's Palp Jabba, and Palp Yellow is the hardest possible matchup for this deck because pulling the caster and killing their yellow does nothing for the deck because, like, I mean, Palpatine doesn't care about a supporting character and whether that character is alive. So killing the supporting character does nothing in the game, but you have to do it because if you get desperate measured, you lose. I have won the games. I have won a couple times, and I was feeling like a lot better about the matchup because I played it a ton into Michael Spalding. So he was gracious enough to give me a ton of practice into that deck because I was just like, this is my worst matchup. I gotta get good at it. And it was going okay until I think like end of round 4. I had like 8 damage on his Palp. His job is dead. I had like 2 engineers left and a fully loaded up caster. I'm like, okay, we have a chance here. I can roll out, do some damage, roll out again, do some damage with the caster, and maybe kill his Palp. But I looked through his discard pile, and this was like, there were like 18 cards in his discard pile or something. And, I'd been using chopper discards throughout the game. I'd hit him with scruffy-looking Nerf Herder. I'd played a no answer against him. And I'm looking through the discard pile, and I realized he hasn't played either of his Bactas or had them discarded from his hand. And at that point, I was like, well, I guess I'm screwed. Unless they're, like, at the bottom of his deck. So he has, like, 12 cards left. He could misdrawing them, but instead he draws both. And he heals 10 that round and basically kills me. I think I ended the round with, like, 1 engineer left alive. But yeah, the travesty of realizing that he had basically not kept his Bacta therapies safe by having them towards the bottom of his deck was really sad. Obviously, I was kind of hoping for some luck into that matchup. I needed him to have those Bactas in the bottom, like 7 cards, or at least one of them would have given me hope. But instead, he just healed Palp for 10, and I couldn't quite kill him. That was it. I went 4-3, and then next round I finally saw a Raylo, and crushed that one. Not even really close. I mean, the Raylo matchup's so free with caster and decent control like Outgun. So it was a sad day to go 5-3. 2 of the losses, my opponents kind of high rolled me. The Jabba getting the good old having the Palp Jabba having the back to therapies on the bottom of his deck, and then the other Jabba having the double CI with the Umbaran hover tank for a boatload of damage in rounds 1 and 2. It was unfortunate, but then the real kicker was facing Andrew in round 2. Um, but yeah, I mean, I still felt okay about the tournament. I still feel great about the deck. Uh, I'm not gonna call it like some sort of meta breaking deck that's like tier 1, like S tier or something. But I would argue it's at least tier 1.5. And if you've played it enough to the point where you feel really comfortable with it, I think it is a good choice in the meta, just because of how strong the Shadowcaster is and how strong Chopper is. If you can control if you get good into the villain yellow matchups and get to the point where how I felt, where I was able to play in all of these pods, play through 5 decks in the tournament itself. Right, I faced 5 decks that could blow up caster, and I never had my caster blown up. If you can get to that point where basically you're protecting your caster really well, then the deck really sings and begins to feel like a good pick in this meta. The hard thing is, the thing that makes the deck, in my opinion, not like tier 1 and or keeps it at tier 1.5 is that it is a very much a solitaire deck. You have one game plan, and that game plan is Shadowcaster and resetting it and killing people. You do have a lot of outplay potential with like Chopper's discards and disrupts, and even just randomly hitting with melee. I had a couple games where like Chopper alone dealt 8 damage to their villain yellow, and you're able to almost threaten the villain yellow kill with just the Chopper, depending upon how you draw and how much control they get. So there is a little bit of interplay, especially with, like, there is a decent sized removal suite, but for the most part, the person who's playing the game is your opponent, and you're just acting like a raid boss in some sort of computer game, and they just have to know how to beat you, and they need to get good at beating you, and then once they get to that point, they will start beating you, right? So especially Chopper droids, which should be like a favorable matchup because dealing 6 to droids is like free wins. Especially Chopper droids, the longer they play you, the more they'll get to the point where they're beating you. And the more Villain Yellow learns about how the deck works, the better chance they have of keeping you off of caster and keeping you off of what you want to do. Which isn't to say that like the deck is beatable once you've played enough games against, like, you can't win with the deck once your opponents have played enough games against it. It's not to say that. Like, I'd played like 30 games into, like, no joke, into Michael Spalding on Palp Yellow, and he's getting all this practice into it, and then like on stream and we just casually played a game and I managed to beat him at Worlds, right? So it's not like it becomes unwinnable. It's just like matchups where I feel like the deck is like 70-30 into Jabba, right? Into Jabba Sentinel Watt. I feel like it's a 70-30 matchup for you because they just don't do enough damage to threaten the Chopper, and Chopper does so much work, and then you just hit their hand once, and then you get out your caster, and it's a free win from there. That matchup can definitely be pushed to the point where it's more like a 55-45 or even a 50-50. Same with like Forlom, where I felt super good about it because they don't draw enough cards, and as long as I kept Chopper alive with like EMPs and easy pickings and Riot Shields, then Chopper was going to do enough work. I was going to be able to hit their hand, I was going to be able to pull that caster and kill the Forlom. The longer for the Forlom player plays that against you, it moves from like the good old like 70-30 range to the 60-40 to the 55-45 to the 50-50. I don't know that it ever gets to the point where you're in a losing matchup until maybe you get to Afra and Chopper. I think Afra and Chopper are probably your losing matchups. Although Hondroids is like a cakewalk for the deck because Hondroids Hondroids can potentially disrupt you a bunch if they have the right upgrades to start, like an A300 or something, but they're so heavily reliant on their control, and if you can get that TLT down, you're kind of set. So yeah, I feel really good about the deck. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much. Hopefully I answered most of your guys' questions about it. I'll be posting the deck list to the DB tonight, and this should be going up probably tomorrow. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you have any questions about the deck, feel free to ask me about them in the comments below. And feel free to check out our Patreon. Obviously, like most people, we're kind of in that post-Worlds fatigue. But and in our area, for whatever reason, most of the regionals don't start up for a while. We have like a regional in Iowa on December 14th, I want to say, something like that. And then most of our regionals in like January, February timeframe. So it's kind of a bit of a lull for the Midwest area, but we're definitely still chatting in our Discord, and yeah. So hope you guys like the deck. I haven't named it yet, so we'll find out what the name is when I post the list. Yeah, I love this deck. It's my little favorite deck for this meta. It's a blast to play. It's not very fun to play against, but until next game, until next time, guys. See ya.